Rain fell over the Blackthorn territory the night Lyra Voss walked through its gates, carrying nothing but a torn cloak and a name that made grown warriors sneer. She had heard the stories about Alpha King Damian Ashford long before she saw his face, a ruler who commanded the strongest pack among the 9 territories, feared by rivals and worshipped by his own people. She had not come for his approval. She had come because her home was gone, burned to ash by an enemy pack 3 nights earlier, and the Blackthorn lands were the only safe ground left within reach. She stood in the great hall with her clothes still damp, watching firelight flicker across stone walls, lined with the banners of 100 victories. When Damian entered, the room fell silent, the way rooms do for men who are used to being obeyed. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of a winter sky, and he looked at Lyra the way someone might look at a stray animal that had wandered somewhere it did not belong. "A Voss," he said, before she had even given her name. Word traveled fast, even to Alpha Kings. "I did not think there were any of you left." "There is one," Lyra answered quietly. "Me." A ripple of laughter moved through the hall. Someone near the back muttered a joke about broken bloodlines, and Damian did not silence it. Instead, he studied her with something between curiosity and disdain. "The Voss line has not produced a true wolf in 300 years, he said. "Your family name is spoken of the way people speak of ghosts. Old stories, nothing more. Tell me, Lyra Voss, have you ever shifted?" The question landed like a slap. Lyra lifted her chin, refusing to let the sting show on her face. "I have not," she admitted. "Not yet." "Not yet," he repeated, and there was no kindness in the way he said it. "How poetic." He turned to his advisors, already dismissing her. "Give her a place among the servants. It is more than her bloodline has earned in 3 centuries. Lyra did not argue. She had learned long ago that pride was a luxury for people who still had somewhere else to go. She bowed her head and let herself be led away, past the smirking faces of pack members who would spend the coming weeks treating her exactly as their alpha had, as something beneath their notice. The servants' quarters were cold and cramped, tucked behind the kitchens, where the smell of smoke never quite faded. Lyra scrubbed floors, hauled water, and mended clothing for wolves who barely looked at her twice. At night, alone in the dark, she pressed her hand against her chest and waited for the wolf inside her to answer. It never did. Only silence, deep and unmoving, like a door that refused to open no matter how hard she knocked. She thought often of her grandmother, who had died the winter before, whispering strange words with her final breaths. "The Voss wolf is not broken, child. It sleeps. It was sealed away by those who feared what it could become. One day it will wake, and when it does, remember who you are." At the time, Lyra had thought it was simply the talk of an old woman losing her grip on the world. Now, scrubbing stone floors in a stranger's kingdom, she wondered if there had been truth buried in those words after all. Weeks passed. Damian crossed her path more often than she expected for a man who ruled an entire territory. He seemed almost amused by her presence, needling her whenever the opportunity arose. Once, during a gathering in the courtyard, he asked in front of a dozen pack members whether her wolf was hiding out of shame. Another time, he remarked that perhaps the Voss line had simply forgotten how to be wolves at all and become something lesser instead. Lyra absorbed each comment the way stone absorbs rain, quietly, without visible cracks, though something inside her wore thinner each time. What Damian did not see, what none of them saw, was the ember that his mockery kept lighting instead of smothering. Every insult became a question she turned over at night. Every laugh from his pack became a reason to stand a little straighter the next morning. She began to notice things about herself she had never paid attention to before. The way her senses sharpened at the edge of the forest, the way her pulse would quicken and steady in perfect rhythm whenever danger passed nearby, as though something ancient inside her was listening, waiting for its moment. The moment came on a night no one expected. A rival pack, the Draven, launched a raid against the northern border of Blackthorn territory, striking during a storm so violent that half the warning howls were swallowed by thunder before they ever reached the stronghold. Chaos spread through the camp. Warriors scrambled from their posts, caught between defending the walls and finding their alpha, who had gone out earlier that evening to inspect the border himself with only a small guard. Lyra was carrying water toward the kitchens when the first horn sounded. She dropped the buckets and ran toward the noise instead of away from it, some instinct pulling her forward before her mind had fully caught up. She found Damien in a shallow ravine near the tree line, his guards scattered or fallen, his shoulder torn open by a draven wolf twice his size. He was still fighting, but barely, his strength draining with every passing second, surrounded by 3 enemy wolves closing in for the kill. There was no time to call for help, no time to think. Lyra's whole body went cold, then impossibly hot, as if something buried deep beneath her ribs had finally heard its name spoken aloud. The sealed door her grandmother had spoken of did not creak open slowly. It shattered. Pain and light tore through her at once, and when it passed, she was no longer standing on 2 legs. She was something ancient, something vast, a wolf larger than any creature the Draven warriors had ever seen, her fur dark as the storm above them, her presence pressing down on the clearing like the arrival of a force much older than any pack alive that night. The attacking wolves froze mid-stride. Even Damien, bleeding and half-conscious against a fallen tree, lifted his head and stared as though the world had shifted its shape without warning. Lyra did not think. She moved. The battle that followed lasted only moments, though it felt endless to those who witnessed it. Her strength was not the strength of a young wolf discovering its first shift. It moved with the certainty of something that had done this before, long ago, in a body that remembered, even when her mind did not. The Draven wolves, outmatched and startled, broke formation and fled back toward their own territory, leaving fallen weapons and torn earth behind them. When the clearing fell silent, Lyra shifted back, trembling, and knelt beside Damien, pressing her hands over his wound to slow the bleeding until his guards finally found them. He looked up at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before, not mockery, not amusement, but something closer to disbelief. "You," he managed, his voice rough, "your wolf, is not broken," Lyra said quietly. It was never broken. The following days brought answers Lyra had spent her whole life without. An elder among Damien's advisors, a woman old enough to remember stories few others did, recognized the markings Lyra's wolf had carried in that brief, powerful shift. The Voss bloodline, she explained, did not descend from a weaker line at all. It descended from one of the founding wolf families of the 9 territories, older than the Ashford line itself, powerful enough that an early Alpha King, generations back, had feared what such strength might mean for his own reign. Rather than risk a rival born from friendship or alliance, that Alpha King had arranged for the Voss bloodline's power to be sealed, buried so deep that even the Voss family itself eventually forgot the truth, mistaking their silence for weakness. The humiliation Lyra had endured for weeks had not been punishment for a broken bloodline. It had been fear, disguised as scorn, aimed at a line no one had wanted to remember. Damien, recovering slowly from his wounds, called the pack together in the same great hall where he had first mocked her. Lyra stood before them now, not as a servant, but as herself, the last of a bloodline that predated his own family's rule. The hall that had once laughed at her stood silent, waiting. "I was wrong," Damien said, and the words seemed to cost him something, spoken plainly in front of the pack that had followed his lead in scorning her. "I judged a bloodline I did not understand, and I let my pack follow that judgment without question. Lyra Voss saved my life when every one of us had already decided she was beneath our notice. That will not happen again." Lyra listened to his words, and for the first time since arriving at Blackthorn, she allowed herself to feel something other than quiet endurance. Not triumph exactly, something steadier, the sense of a door long closed finally standing open, letting in air she had not realized she was missing. She did not ask for revenge, though some in the hall clearly expected her to demand it. She did not need it. She had spent her life being told her family's strength was a myth, and now that myth stood undeniable in front of everyone who had ever doubted it. That was enough. "I did not come here for your throne," she told Damien, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "I came here because I had nowhere else to go. If I stay, it will not be as a servant, and it will not be because your pack finally decided I am worth acknowledging. It will be because I choose to." Damien held her gaze, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he inclined his head, an unmistakable gesture of respect from a man who rarely offered it to anyone. "Then I hope you choose to stay," he said. "The Blackthorn pack is stronger with your bloodline standing beside it, not beneath it." In the weeks that followed, word of the night in the ravine spread far beyond Blackthorn's borders. The story of the servant girl whose ancient wolf had silenced an Alpha King's court and driven off an entire raiding party. Packs that had once dismissed the Voss name began to speak of it differently, with a caution that had not existed in generations. Within the Blackthorn stronghold itself, Lyra was no longer the outsider scrubbing floors in the shadows. She walked among the pack as an equal, her presence commanding a quiet respect that no title could have given her. Damien changed too, in smaller ways that were easy to miss, unless someone was paying attention. He sought her opinion during council meetings. He no longer allowed careless jokes about bloodlines to pass unchallenged in his hall. And more than once, Lyra caught him watching her across a room, with an expression that had nothing to do with kingship or power. Something quieter, more uncertain, like a man recalculating everything he thought he knew. Lyra did not know yet what her future within Blackthorn territory would look like, or what it might mean for the fragile, complicated respect growing between her and the Alpha King, who had once tried to break her spirit with words alone. But she knew this much. She had arrived at these gates with nothing, mocked for a bloodline everyone believed was already dead. She was leaving that version of herself behind. Her wolf had not needed anyone's permission to exist. It never had. And for the first time in her life, neither did she.